Good afternoon, everyone. Having a UK corrugated print show, it seems the perfect opportunity to have a panel of industry experts looking at what's happening with digital printing. Obviously, it's still very much on the front of everyone's mind at the moment. But what we wanted to try and do on this session was actually look at what's happening, what the challenges are, and where we think the brand owners are in terms of adoption and acceptance of corrugated with digital print. So I'm lucky to be joined by Wolfram from Durst, who's going to be talking to us from generically from an OEM's perspective on the equipment that's being used. We've got two converters, Nick Kirby and we've got Steve from Cepac. Nick, obviously, who's already just spoken to us. And then from a material side, we're also going to be looking at the importance of the actual sheet that we're putting through. We're joined by Mike from Smurfit Kappa. So the panel is here for the rest of today, so please do feel free to try and catch up with them. But what we will do towards the end of this session is we'll see if we can get a microphone to be booted around for any specific questions that might be, So we'll do that at the end, Susie, okay. So please do feel free to have your questions ready, and Susie will come and give you the mic. Wolfram, I'm going to come to you first, because I think what I'd like to try and do is get a feeling from the machinery manufacturer's point of view as to how you feel the technology has been developing, because obviously it's been developing at a very fast rate. We're now at truly single pass, because obviously when digital came to corrugated, it was multi-pass. Right. And there's obviously been some challenges for you as machinery manufacturers. Sure. Just run over some of those issues that you've been facing in terms of developing a stable enough platform to handle our awful material corrugated.
Okay, sure. Please excuse my English. I'm the only one not speaking natively English, so apologize for that. I'm Austrian, living in Switzerland. Yeah, talking about technology, I'm coming out of the flexo world. So I started my career with a Bob's Masterflex back in 1997. So that was a time when we started with digital flexiblades out of DuPont, and that was quite a new world as well. And I'm feeling now that this is repeating. We have developed digital printing machines at Durst for more than 50 years on a multi-pass level. Coming to single pass, it's a challenge. On the narrow web, on the label machines, we have that as well, and HP and other partners or competitors are doing the same since many, many years. This is a very narrow web with a nice substrate. It's a flat substrate, a very clean environment. And coming to a corrugated world, bringing a single pass machine into a corrugated plant, and you have to deal with corrugated boards, and they're not always flat. So the surface is not always the same. There's coated and uncoated stock. So a lot of challenges in the end, and then the question is, do you go water or do you go UV? That's a fundamental question. Mm-hmm. For the moment, we have always been developing machines in our R&D department on UV. And now,
and it's not just you. I mean, the majority of the OEMs have all started. They've brought this technology across,
absolutely,
and assumed that UV was going to be okay for corrugated.
Yeah. And it is okay. It is okay. We see some success. We see a lower barrier in the United States market, for example, to go for UV, and we see successfully printers on the market printing with UV machines. So we sell UV machines as well. So as HP is doing and other partners on the market, so there's nothing wrong, particularly with UV. No. But the world is driven by brand owners and by the consumers, and in the future nobody wants to have UV around food. Mm-hmm. And this is driven by HP. They have a big marketing power. They say nobody wants to have UV around food. Mm-hmm. Is that necessarily needed for all the products? I don't know. I'm not the brand owner and I'm not buying this product. I think there is a certain need for UV for the moment, and for some years to come as well. But 5 years down the road, I think the majority will be on water.
Yeah. Okay, well, sticking with machinery now, how difficult has it been for digital OEMs to actually understand not just the the sort of sheet format that we're using, or we're used to within our industry, because we all have standard size flatbed die cutters, 1.6, 2.1. Some companies have gone off and chosen different formats. Some have stuck to the traditional corrugated formats.
Right.
How difficult is that as a manufacturer to really understand an industry that is relatively new to you?
Yeah, I think we better talk to you guys. We better talk to the industry. We better listen. If we don't listen, we make some mistakes, and we do. We all do. In the end, our machine is in width 1.3 meters. Some did 2.1 meters. Some doing smaller. Yeah. In the end, the industry expects a machine which comes for a decent price at high speed with the right size of a machine. In Europe, I feel that the Bobst Mastercut format is the right standard. 2.1 by 1.3 fits more or less everybody. Going to the United States, size matters. Bigger, And in the end, it's adding up print heads, it's adding up more complexity and so on. The machine is more pricey.
And so how do you balance the whole argument? Because obviously you're talking to an industry who likes volume. How do you balance the expectation between speed and performance? Because obviously, with inkjet, effectively, the more ink you're putting, the slower the process. So how do you balance that for the expectation for the converters?
You talk to 5 converters and they hear 5 different opinions. So normally you have to build 5 different machines here. I think it is so important to see and talk to the brain owners as well, talk to design departments as well. What is their expectation? So if you look in the specs of a digital printing machine, and you can open all the specs of our industry leading manufacturers out in the world, it's EFI, is it Bobst, is it Durst, is it HP, is it you name it, all the players. Everybody is opening his brochure and is putting some figures in. And it looks like a Porsche. It is high speed here, high speed there. What is the reality for everybody? It's not even close in operation, because you have the setup time, you have a narrowing width, you have the job changes, you have the cleaning, you have a learning curve, you have to educate your customers, you have to educate your people, and so on. And so to build up a knowledge like Nick has in his company, it's not coming overnight. You can't build it overnight. That's a certain expertise. So.
Okay, Mike, I'm going to come to you now, particularly on the material side, because obviously your organisation has done an awful lot of research on how the ink reacts with the liners, the materials, etc. And you've obviously got to a stage now where you are developing a particular flute of type of board that is specific for digital. What was the reasoning with that? Was it sort of you were looking at we need to have the perfect product to print on?
Yeah, I mean we very quickly understood that people in the digital space had a different set of challenges, a different set of variables to try and manage, and what worked in screen or what worked in flexo does not work from a sheetboard perspective in digital. So we started with a team back at base some years back, and did a lot of market research, listened to a lot of early adopters, a lot of people who were building their businesses based on the digital platforms. And we brought that knowledge and experience and learnings back to base, and we set about designing what we refer to as DigiFlute. DigiFlute is a suite of specialist board grades that have been developed specifically for, or almost exclusively for, digital presses. And that volume has grown from 0 just a few years ago to this year we'll produce in excess of 25 million square meters of DigiFlute for supply into the UK and Ireland markets. And we had a lot of learnings. I mean, it started with making sure we were sourcing paper that was chain of custody certified, so everything is FSC certified was the starting point. We then had to do a lot of work and invested a lot of money in our process from a process control perspective. Because as anybody who prints digitally in the room will know, shape matters, size matters, but shape matters as well, and digital presses do not work well with any amount of up warp, so flat or slight down warp is what's required. We understood issues to do with mottling and burnishing, which wasn't as prevalent on more traditional technologies, and we ended up selecting papers specifically chosen to overcome these issues. So the papers have surface smoothness characteristics and porosity characteristics that work very well with the suction beds that you have on digital presses,
Yep.
and minimise the risk of the burnishing effect you get when sheets shingle one on top of the other and
Yep.
disturb the clay surface that obviously is the print surface. So it was a big team effort and a lot of listening to our customers and a lot of work
and
back
a
at
lot of
base.
work with the mills as well, because obviously,
Absolutely.
the difference between a coated craft liner and uncoated is going to give you a different print result, isn't it?
Absolutely. We did a fairly exhaustive set of trials going through a lot of different material substrates that are available in the marketplace before we settled on the ones that we found based on customer feedback
Yeah.
to be the ones that worked best and worked most consistently in the market. So it was a long labour of love.
Yeah.
There were a few millions of pounds of investment that underpinned it as well in terms of the process control, but also a key aspect of digital board as well is its presentation,
Yeah.
how it's palletized and making sure that it arrives flat.
Yeah.
So a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of money went into getting the combination of variables just right. And for us, it's been a hugely successful development, and we see very, very strong growth continuing to this day.
And can you give us a rough feel for how much of that square meterage is used for display versus packaging? Because this is an area that I want to bring the conversation onto now.
So the number I mentioned would almost exclusively be digital. Display versus packaging, excuse me. You know what, I don't know off the top of my head. I could give you an honest split, but I would say the majority, I would even say the vast majority is display.
Displays,
Yeah.
okay.
I couldn't give you a statistic off the top of my head. But
Because obviously I know
largely
that
display.
within your group you have quite a lot of experience with digital printing, and you've acquired various companies over the years, but those tended to have been sort of more on the display side, haven't they?
We do, but it's probably important for me to say that Smurfit Kappa Sheetfeeding, the business I represent, is strictly a trade confidential business.
Sure.
So even though my first cousins on the conversion side will be involved in that area, there is no overlap or no interaction. We maintain a very strict trade confidential route to the market out of necessity for the business that we're in. So while Smurfit Kappa Group are obviously a player in the digital market, it isn't something knowledge
Within
that we
your
specifically
range,
draw upon or attempt to interface with.
Okay, well, also on the stage we've got two gentlemen whose businesses are actually utilising digital print to quite a high level now, and obviously split a little bit between display and packaging. But Steve, I'd like to come to you, please, if I may, Steve from Cepac. How are your customers handling digital, and how are they getting to grips with it at the moment? Do they really understand the power of what digital offers them? And I'm asking you that with a packaging head on now.
Okay, I was going to answer
because the display boys are easy. They say,
yeah, we're answering with a POS head on. But no, I mean, in POS, it's now well established.
Yeah.
And when we bought the screen print Doncaster business, it had taken an HP 7600 machine, and the vast majority of the work was still at that point going through screen printers. That's now almost non-existent. It's everything we do is either through our 7600 or the more recent machine that we bought, the HP 17000. We've been very slow to transition into short-run packaging, I think it's fair to say. And we have searched high and low to try to find a digital market, and it lies somewhere, we believe, between HQPP, high quality flexo post-print, and offset litho, both of which we cover within our business portfolio. But we've been very slow to convince brand owners that they should actually take the risk to move to digital. And
what's their reluctance, do you think? Is it that sort of like, oh, I want to see someone else do it first? Or
well, I think there's an element of that, and certainly where, from our perspective, we've actually had to drop the tag digital print and say, we just want to talk to you about new print technologies. And because as soon as you put the tag digital on, everyone's hands go in the air and they say, oh, I don't like it, it's too expensive, it's too slow, it's too this. So we've had I think the digital industry has had some bad press. Technology's moved on, there's a new generation of presses out there, but the brand owners still seem reluctant to actually take that step. I was talking to one quite recently, It was a launch of a new product or a brand extension. They were very keen to go down the route because they saw versioning, multi-languaging, and the anti-counterfeit properties as extremely useful. But then, having spoken to the head of the brand, he said, too big a risk, we'll stick with offset litho and just pay the price for offset litho.
Right.
For the launch, quantities were between 20 and 30,000. It would have perfectly suited a good digital press, but they were just reluctant to take that leap of faith.
Yeah. And do you feel that part of the problem is, from our side as an industry, education to the brand owners, or do you think they've got a pretty good handle on what it can and can't do?
Yeah, I think it is education to a great extent. They do understand the value of versioning, they do understand the value of anti-counterfeit and multi-languaging and all the variable data that you can put onto a machine, onto a box. But I think they still want to convert their analogue prints. They want us to replicate their analogue prints in a digital format, and that just doesn't work.
No, because you're trying to compare apples with oranges, really, aren't you?
Absolutely. So we've spent years. I've been in the corrugated industry more years than I care to remember, and flexo printing more years than I care to remember. And the mantra of the flexo printer is spot colours. It's all about. We can't really print that brilliantly, but you can have this great spot colour because our ink kitchen can hit that colour every time. With digital, you have to think differently. So your designers, your reprographics people have to think about reducing the amount of ink that you're laying down onto the box and being far more creative with the package itself and the design itself. The biggest bugbear of digital print from everyone's point of view, nearly everyone I speak to anyway, they say the ink costs are too high. Well, they are if you replicate analogue prints. They're not if you can manage away the amount of ink lay down that you have to put onto the sheet.
So, we picked up on a theme here of people and changing mindsets. Nick, you've been at the forefront of digital print for, it feels like about 25 years, doesn't it? The trials and tribulations. But seriously, Nick, the importance of getting people to understand that this is not a flexo replacement, it's not a litho replacement, it is another process. If you could do your journey again, would the mindset be at the top of your list in terms of change?
Absolutely. I mean, this is, if you buy a digital machine, it's not just about buying the machine, putting it in, and saying to your team, right, there it is, go out and sell it and do it, because the mindset is completely different. You cannot bring an analog mindset into the digital world and expect to create opportunity, because a lot of that opportunity is already serviced by the analog processes. Those won't go away, they will be there, and analog has a place. So what we need to be doing really with the digital technology that's available is saying, well, okay, the solution for us to achieve this particular order or specification is digital, because there could be versioning, there could be a 2-day lead time. It's perfectly possible to do it digitally, of course. Everything that digital brings, it's really about mindset of how you're going to sell those benefits. If you go into it with the lethargic nature of analog, it's not going to succeed. You have to be, everything happens like now, and being able to react and having your team, something lands into the office and it's jumped on immediately and then processed through to an order is fundamental to digital success. But the other thing I would say for digital when you're selling it, and my presentation tomorrow is on upselling digital, is it really is giving a solution that you can't always get with analog. Sometimes you can, but not always. So if you're offering a good solution to something that otherwise would have been a lost opportunity, you've got to have the right mindset to latch onto it and think, well, actually, we can do this, and we can charge a little bit more because we are solving a problem.
But do you feel, though, as an analog business, because effectively the corrugated industry is an analog business, do you think we've created a rod for our own back in terms of, unique pieces, versioning, etc.? Because, when digital first came to market, sort of like 7, 8, 10 years ago, everyone was talking about the ability to be able to have individual sheets, etc. But as an industry, we're not really set up for it yet, are we? I mean, you've got to think about the workflow, you've got to think about the data. Because data's critical, isn't it?
Data's critical. There are occasions where that doesn't matter. So you might have a sequential number, for instance, which is the point of difference on every single box. That's fine, that'll go through. But if you're talking about versioning, regionalisation, taking advantage of circumstance and all these sort of things, yes, you can do it digitally, but everything after that or before it is your challenge. So you could have 10,000 boxes, each with individual names, Fred, Joe, Linda, whatever, on the box. But when it comes to actually the packing and filling element of those products, it just gets to pieces. Because the infrastructure to support the advancement on digital is just not quite there. Digital in itself is there. It's amazing technology. But around it, the peripheral areas that need to support it need a lot more development yet.
And Wolfram, I'm going to come back to you on the machine side now, because what we're touching on here is we're saying we can print all these unique sheets, but if we screw one up in the die cutter, unless we've got that data loop that can then send it back to, say, reprint that particular sheet. So with your knowledge from your years at Bobst, etc., where you understand the handling in an analog process, what work are the OEMs doing at the moment in terms of helping educate the converters the importance of data management? Because that's critical to this process, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, but it's not only the converters, it's the brand owners as well. And we have to be very honest, in a corrugated world, talking box world, not display world. It is not the first priority of a brand owner. It's not a corrugated box. It's a secondary or third packaging. So there's not in the focus. I'm talking a lot to brand owners, and I'm sure that others doing that as well, to educate them what is possible on a box and what makes sense to be printed on a box. Not everything makes sense. You can do some short runs, super short runs with different names, versionings and so on, but printing 1 million boxes with different names, who is doing that? So there needs to be a clear reason to do so. There needs to be an application. And I think the world is changing, and using less materials, using less ink, being more environmental friendly, tackling the needs of the retails, online stores, sending back things and so on and so on. So this is opening new opportunities in applications. In this place, I see a lot of this happening. Versioning, going into a direction that you will have a display which is changed all over the time. It's football, it is baseball playing in London, there are other events happening. So it's very event-based. In packaging, I think it needs to be in the need of a brand owner. I don't think a brand owner has a need today to have a box with different names printed on it. So we have to create a need for good reasons, not just an idea which is not working in the end. I don't want to go as a printing company telling a brand owner a lot of bullshit which is not happening on the market. That's stupid, huh? We need to work together. And coming back to your question, of course, we need to work together. I have to listen. I have to listen to these guys. They know it all. And I like to work with partners like Smurfit Kappa as well, because they are the driver. They're producing paper, they do boards, they are installing a lot of printing machines. Of course, not every machine is digital, but in the future there will be more and more and more digital coming down the road. And if we can get rid of primer, that would be fantastic. If they solve the problem. Flat board? Have we heard that? It's fantastic, huh? Never saw that.
Now I'm going to ask this question to both Steve and Nick, because I don't want to throw the cat amongst the pigeons here, but there is no doubt that there seems to have been a little bit of a slowdown in the adoption of digital printing. There was obviously an awful lot of hype, there was a lot of early adopters, but we don't seem to have seen the next phase coming through. Steve, what do you feel it is that's stopping people from making the decision? And I'm talking now with your box making head on now. I mean, is it ink, in other words, the price, or the UV conundrum? Is it format? Is it speed? What do you feel it is that sort of put the brakes on a little bit?
Well, I can only speak from my experience and my perspective at Cepac, and I think we've got several things we need to unblock before this is really going to happen. The first one is education of our own sales team.
Yeah.
I think that's a massive challenge. We've got within our business some very good sales team, very good salespeople. They traditionally have been, to a great extent, account managers.
Yeah.
And if we've got, as we say, hunters and farmers, if we've got both, but we've either got a hunter who's very good at opening doors. Yeah. We've got an account manager a farmer who's very good at account managing. Yeah. What we need are problem solvers. We need people to go into customers and identify value and try and unlock that value. And that's quite a different mindset to what the corrugated industry has had to have before. So I think that's something we're trying to address within our business at the moment. We have looked at all sorts of digital technology. And we've spoken to all the brand owners about the different formats. Yeah. We have decided, I think, that our next step will be single pass sheet fed machine. Yeah. We'd like to think that with that machine we could unlock about 10 to 15 million square metres. Yeah. That's less adventurous than going for a web press where you've got 100 million square metres to try and unlock. Yeah. 10 to 15 ought to be doable. I think it's a lot down to education of the sales teams and working with the sales teams to develop solutions for customers. Right. And once we've got over that hurdle, for me, the problem will be solved.
Nick, what do you think is holding the sector back as a whole? Similar for our group as well, but I think the thing that has really rung one or two alarm bells with us has been the perceived failures. There's been an awful lot of hype and promise going back 5 years. I mean, I can remember Drupa 2016? 2016, where there were mystic rooms you go into, and this is the future, and this is... selling something which was going to transform the corrugated sector. Yeah. And quite frankly, it's just not happened. Yeah. But the reason it's not happened has been the technology has not been ready. Yeah. And there have been failures. Now, some of those failures are being developed still, and they will get good. Yeah. Others have been pulled as projects. And I think what the industry needs, really, all the OEMs need, is a successful sale of digital machines. Doesn't matter what brand they are, because there has to be some confidence that the technology is there. I think for us, we've stood back. We got pretty close to putting our first single pass in over 12 months ago now. But we backed off because we saw some fundamental issues that we were not happy with. I think now we are much happier with what we see. We're still debating about things like inks, which ink set to go. Yes, fine, there's hybrid inks, water-based, UV, so we need to be clear on what we're doing. But what I do is when I look at our customer base, many sitting here today, and think, well, what do they want? What do they want that we can give them, that we're not giving them any barriers? We were not happy that we could break down those barriers with what was available at the time. Yeah. I think that's changed now, and we are ready to invest. And as I said earlier, we're in the final decision-making process of which way we go. But it was the confidence of having a stable platform is what really held us back. And Mike, I know obviously your area of expertise is the actual material itself. However, do you feel that there's been a misunderstanding of the ink technologies that are out there, that the converters maybe have not been able to educate their customers on? Because obviously you've got water-based, which is true flexo replacement, which we know is fully recyclable. Then you've got this sort of what they call aqueous UV, and people latch onto the fact, oh, it's water-based, but it's still UV. And then you've got true traditional UV, as we all know. Do you think that maybe the ink companies need to do a bit more in educating on?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt, Dan. I would say, I know from a Smurfit Kappa standpoint, just listening to some of my colleagues who are involved in the print side, we actually tried to step back from getting too deep into the arguments with customers about individual ink technologies or even individual print processes, and try and focus on the fact that fundamentally it's about a brand owner trying to present their product, their image, their brand in the most appropriate way. Yeah. So I think there is still a huge education gap and a huge understanding gap that the industry is still wrestling with and probably will for some time to come. And going back to what Nick was mentioning just a moment ago, I think when the right combination hits the market and the market actually properly gets into gear from a digital perspective, then some of that will melt away and become less foggy and less of an issue.
Because of course, as an industry, I mean, if you think back, not even, 8 years ago, there was all the issue with the inks in the recycled papers, etc.
Absolutely.
There's an awful lot of scaremongering that goes on, and people are very quick to latch on, aren't they, to any sort of negative press?
For sure, yeah. I mean, this morning, as I was traveling here by train this morning, I was speaking to a customer who's mentioning no names, but the customer is going through a massive relaunch of a household product, purely in response to the environmental concerns as to how the product looks on the shelf. And the pressures that I think the brand owners are facing today are changing rapidly and changing significantly. And a lot of people in the market are trying to find the right combination or the right solution to really take full advantage. But it's still by no means an end game. There's still a lot to define and to get clear for the future.
Good. Well, we've managed to rattle through half an hour quite quickly, actually. So I'm going to use this opportunity to throw open to the audience the opportunity for any questions of the panel members. So I don't know whether anyone has got any specific questions for any of our team. I'm actually blind up here. I can't see from the I'm stuck in the headlights.
There's a question here.
Okay, so we've got one over here.
First one is always difficult. It's always like that.
Thanks for that. Thanks to the panel, first of all. My name is Daniel. I'm from Flint Inc. Question, digital technology is still fairly expensive, and as a corrugated industry, we tend to throw away quite a lot of nice features that we could sell to the customer. Rather, we are not really capable of selling value add. So from the very different perspectives on the panel, how do you think we could sell value add through digital printing? That way, not giving away the margins too quickly and making digital printing something that is also worthwhile from a business case perspective?
That's a really good question. I'm going to boot that straight to Nick because I know he's got a very clear view on it.
What we need to do, Danielle, is sell the need. So we have to understand what the customer is trying to achieve and provide digital as the option. So if we are selling the need for digital to solve a solution, their own mindset is going to be more tuned in to what digital can give, and it will create the market on the back of it. So it is very much mindset change. It's an educational thing. As we know, lots of this is consumer driven, so there's a lot of consumer drive. They're looking for recognizable branding, they're looking for information, lots of different variable information, and that consumer pressure then gets to the manufacturer and eventually back to the box maker. And if the box maker is selling the need for digital to solve that solution in record-breaking time compared to something that maybe analog could give, then it is going to drive that market. I think the frustrating thing is that you do have to have a different approach in selling this technology altogether. Digital is hugely advanced and is actually more advanced than our ability to sell it in many ways. What it can do now for us as an industry, I think we're barely scratching the surface of. So it is about taking what digital can do, educating people on how we can use it to our advantage, and selling the need or seeing digital as the solution. I just don't see that people at the moment see digital as a solution. It's just not on their radar.
But Nick, I'd also like to just add in there that, from the experience I've had talking to customers all over the world who've actually started to implement digital, there's two aspects. The first one is your costing model has to totally change.
Yeah.
You're not comparing one digital job with a flexi job. It's a different rule book. But I think to really drill on the same point, it's about people. And it's the education of your sales team. The most successful people who've rolled out digital have actually used that with a sales team that have not sold brown boxes before. Because if you just take the guy who's in his mid-50s who all he's done is sold 2-colour work, 3-colour work, 4-colour work, brown boxes, and now ask him to sell digital, his mindset's the same. So those who've successfully rolled it out have actually put in completely new sales teams, sometimes people who've come from marketing backgrounds rather than production backgrounds. Yeah. Because then you're selling a concept, you're not actually just selling ink on a box and vice versa. Yeah. But I mean, Steve, would you agree with that it's about education of your sales team?
Yeah, I mean, the best example I can give is that I've seen personally is Hummingbird in the US with Georgia Pacific.
Yeah.
They took a digital opportunity with a T1100 HP machine, and they struggled with it for the first couple of years under the GP banner, recognising all the things we've just discussed about value and about how to create value.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased to say that my experience of them is that they definitely want to sell digital as an added value product, not a commoditised product, which for me is the right way.
Yeah.
But their solution was to set up a separate business, which you may have read in the press is called Hummingbird.
Yeah.
It's extremely successful. I spoke with them only last week. They're making a lot of ground, a lot of traction. It's all about creating that value and hanging on to the value. So they have a production facility. They have a separate marketing and repro suite, which they can take customers to, and they very much at that suite develop solutions and work to the end game with the customer to work up a solution to a particular problem. And that seems to be getting them the type of traction. And I think if we're to make it succeed in Europe, that's the sort of approach we would have to adopt.
We've got to get away from this idea of it's just ink on paper.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So are there any other questions from the audience? No? Okay. Well, I hope you found that useful. Gentlemen, thank you very much for all of your input and for your time. But as I said earlier, all of the team are here for the rest of today, and I'm sure over the lure of a beer or two, I'm sure they'll probably answer a bit more openly on any questions you have. But for the time being, I'd like to thank all of my panel members, and thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you very much.